Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors. This is not Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Why is my brain stuck? Anyway, Kuden Radio. Um, just a sign that I maybe teach too much. Anyway, so this is, let's see, we're in, I normally don't date these things, but we're in mid-April, moving toward the end of April of 2025. So we've been at this for a little bit. This is episode 258. And we are going to continue on with some fundamentals, but we're going to focus on Kyusho, often translated as pressure points. And I did that for a long time as well. But thanks to some teachers enlightening me and a habit that I picked up from Hatsumi Sensei, well, he's already Japanese, but something that became a habit for me was in diving deeper into the Japanese meaning, the kanji behind what's really being conveyed, and then of course paying much more attention to quotes from Hatsumi Sensei, Takamasa Sensei, other teachers that often just kind of get passed around as cool sayings, and people smile and nod, and the kotsu bone, breastbone kind of sticks out like we're all in the know, right? So anyway, during this episode, what we're going to do is take a look at part of kind of a sampling of some parts of a program I will be doing here pretty soon on Kyusho. But we're going to be taking a look at it from a perspective that would also include not just martial artists and those of us in ninjutsu and whatnot, but also practical and usable by law enforcement, security, EMTs, medical staff, anybody that might find themselves in need of this kind of stuff, but who might actually write it off because of certain experiences that they've had where now they're either disillusioned by it or for one reason or another they found them not so dependable, right? And this kind of thing comes from a mistranslation, or at the very least a misunderstanding of the depth, right, of training in this area. So we're going to take a look at that and more when we get started. So I'll see you as soon as we get back.
So the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to Kuden Radio.
All right, and we are back. All right, so I'm sporting my, well, it's a new one. It's obviously not from the days when I actually worked the job, but it's my veteran military police shirt, one of them. So don't get all freaked out by the flag and those kind of things, right? But these cross pistols are the insignia of the United States Army Military Police, or at least they were when I was in. Anyway, excuse me, the pollen's out. I love the seasonal change, but that also means that allergies kick up. Anyway, so the reason I have this is because I want to lead off with a little story about quote unquote pressure points. And this actually comes from a time as a military policeman. And so I was stationed in what was then West Germany. And they're just watching TV one night in the day room, our fancy way of saying rec room, or as a part of the kind of thing, the den. Anyway, TV set up, and we're watching, sitting on this couch, sofa, whatever you want to call it, and one of the NCOs, one of the sergeants, comes in, really tall guy. I can't remember where he was from, but really tall guy. And he had been out on the town with one of the new sergeants that had just joined the unit, and to say they got a little schnookered on German uh, recreational beverages uh, would be an understatement. Right. So, but anyway, he just storms into the day room. Hey, there he is. Right. Check this out, man. This guy's like really, really good at pressure points. And so the day or two before that, I had taught a class, right, on these things for uh, the guys in my particular unit. Just as it was a training day, right, and so he was duly impressed. And hey, check this out, and hey, show me something. Or he holds out his hand, for me to hit this one point that's in here, and I said, no, it's not going to work, right? You're drunk. He goes, no, go ahead, man. It's really, really good. It'll work. It's not going to work. Right? And he goes, no. I said, look, you're not going to be able to feel the pain. Okay. No, go ahead. So I hit this point that's in here. And a lot of you know this one at the junction, right? Where the second metacarpal, first metacarpal, right? Thumb and finger bone, the bones of the hand come together back here, right? It's just a little webbing pocket kind of thing. It's a fairly low end kind of thing. Not that it's not debilitating, but this is not the same one that we have on one of the scrolls as Omotagyaku, right? That one, or Urigyaku, I'm sorry. That one is actually against the metacarpal, forward on the finger. It's not the same spot, right? But anyway, I hit this one, and he goes, "No, you don't have it." I said, "I have it, right? You can't feel it." No, you don't have. So I let go, and he's, see, it didn't work this time. I said, okay, just do yourself a favor and ice your hand or take something, because you're gonna wake up in the morning and your hand's not going to be able to move. And he's talking smack as he leaves. Maybe next time. And so I go back to watching TV. Sure enough, next morning, right, comes into the day room. We're all getting ready to go on duty for things, and he's just pissing vinegar because, God damn it, my hand won't move. I said, well, you're going to have to flex it and stretch it. And I told you last night, but you didn't want to believe me. Well, I didn't feel it. Yes, I know. Okay. I understand. Okay. That's the problem with thinking about these things as pressure points and pain compliance techniques. Okay. And I know, when I was first introduced to these things, that's the way they were introduced to me, right? Pressure point equals, if I hit this, he hurts, right? And like other cool things can happen too, but in some instances it was a statement, in other instances it was an implication that, Kyusho equals pain, right? Pressure point equals pain, right? So we do this to gain pain compliance. And I'm not saying that isn't a type of point, but the word that comes to us from the Japanese language, Kyusho, does not mean pressure point. Okay. There's a part of it that can mean point or location. We'll talk about that in a minute. Right. But there's nothing in there that states or implies pressure. Right. So if you want to really get a handle on these things, if you really want to develop the power that I have found within these things, without limiting yourself, okay, without limiting yourself to, we'll call it, hopefully not offending anybody, kindergarten techniques, right? I'm not saying that pressure points aren't effective. I'm not saying that you can't get pain compliance. But what I am going to say, and it's a huge crux as a part of this program that's coming up, is that if your primary strategy in using pressure points is pain compliance, you could find yourself either like a lot of these law enforcers and whatnot that are highly disappointed, right? Or you could find yourself in a bad way, okay? Because the last thing we want to do in a survival situation or a violent situation is is have our primary strategy collapse like a house of cards. Okay. So now, can you apply pressure and get pain? Yes, of course. Okay. But we are going to talk about uh, several different situations where that's not the case. Uh, and even if the person feels pain, it won't be the same, right? There could be time factors. There could be all kinds of things going on, right? There could be again. I'm not going to cover all the ways that this can happen, but we're going to cover a couple of situations where uh, if your focus is on pain, these things are going to fail you, right? It's going to be a wasted action, or the results that you're going to get from them or that will occur are too late in the chain, right? They won't happen in real time, right? And that's problematic, right? That's extremely problematic. Okay, so we want to break that down, and we're going to take a look at a couple of different types of Kyusho. Okay, different types of Kyusho. Now, way back, James, this had to be within the first maybe 10 episodes of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. I did a class on Kyusho. So this Wednesday, I'll be doing another one. Obviously, the perspective will be a little bit different. That one was much more like base level. And I don't mean like base, not that kind of slang, right? It just foundational base level. But we want to take a look at it look at these things from a tactical perspective and correlate things a little bit better. And then, of course, Friday's masterclass will be actually taking a look at techniques and actually how common techniques that people take for granted. And I don't mean take for granted like, well, that's easy. I mean techniques that we do all the time, like Kyusho, are just embedded in these things. It can be a separate area of study, but we're going to find ourselves coming right back to the same techniques, right? And then if we can understand what given things do and under what conditions, then we can choose our uke nagash or uke uch or whatever techniques we're doing much more strategically, right? Much more tactically, right? To shut things down. And then, of course, none of this would be not that this was going to be a complete session, but it wouldn't be complete without us discussing this from a life mastery kind of perspective. Okay, and once we understand the foundation and crux, what Kyusho really are, it'll be much easier to see that the implications and the application of Kyusho just go way beyond what most people could imagine. Okay. And if you're already at that level, well, then thanks for joining us and adding to the numbers. But hopefully I'm not going to underimpress. Anyway, before we get started, James, who do we have on? I have James. James is hiding in the corner, or he's got his little corner, right? It's kind of the way we set up the screen. There he is. See? James. I don't know. Did we tell anybody last week? Like I threw James off. Sometimes when we sign on to this service, right? Sometimes it'll duplicate the name. Like if you're not careful, like whoever signs in first. Like if he signs in first and he just types in James, if I sign in and I'm not paying attention during the sign-in process, right? It'll sign me in as James as well, right? Or I think last week I was in first, right? And then so it's when you signed in, we were both Dai-Shihan Miller. So I got the jump on him and went into the background and stuff. And instead of just typing in James, I typed in, what did I type in? Like Grand Poobah or something like that. Yeah. Poobah James. So it doesn't show up unless we make his screen really, really big. But I think he changed that very, very quickly. So anyway, all right. Who do we have?
Looks like Terrence, Jared.
Awesome. Terrence, I got your email about the reporting for duty kind of thing. I've just been really, really busy. I spent Easter weekend updating not quite finished yet, but updating the layout and design of the main page of Online Ninja Academy. So yeah, I worked really, really long both days until what's that? There's a line from an old Monty Python's flying circus kind of thing, like a doctor's surgical realm. Guy comes in and they want to know what the problem is, and he goes, "My brain hurts," and that was me. That was me Saturday and Sunday at the end of the day. Anyway, who else do we have? We have James and who? Not James. I'm sorry, Terrence and who?
Jared. Jared said, "Awesome shirt."
Thanks. I know. Anyway, just don't be like some guy that like can't help himself posting on all my freaking videos, like nice chest. Like anyway.
Dave, Jeffrey, Trinity, and Jimmy said "Konbanwa."
Konbanwa. Okay, this guy. Hi. So
that's it for the moment.
Awesome. You're not tearing up or anything, are you?
No.
No. It's Monday. He's going to be talking again. Anyway. All right. Let me go and bring up my notes. Like I said, I've got another full episode for you here. So, and I'm glad that Trin got a chance to check in. I mean, she already told me she made it home and whatnot, but she passed through on her way back to DC from staying with her mom over Easter break, and had lunch with her old man. And I always make her check in. I don't care how old she is. Check in when you get home. But Trinity will be graduating here shortly. Her graduation is May 15th, if I have that right. Be driving down to DC for that. She'll be have her master's from Georgetown University. So proud dad moment. Thank you very much. All right, that's it. That's all I got. She knows it's better than that. Anyway, so what we were taking a look at during this episode again is Kyusho. And if anybody saw the promotional stuff that went out, then you know I push people's buttons because if irritation or curiosity or those kind of things don't happen, if I don't punch Boca's region square in its face, our brains tend to not wake up and pay attention to what's going on, or you know, people hate being manipulated, but if the world doesn't shake you to wake you, I just made that up, then nothing else happens. As a matter of fact, for some folks like Terrence and Trinity, a couple of folks went through the Jusan Butsu program, which is it's based on a old Mikyo training, the sadhana of the 13 Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so these 13 characters, right, that actually represent either internal abilities, qualities, traits, and whatnot to be honed, or the activities that come from those mental abilities and whatnot, right? But the very first character on this thing, and it can be read many different ways. I teach it as part of a path because it really is an enlightenment path. The very first character is this Fudo-myo character. Some of you guys know it, right? This guy, fangs, except he looks kind of goofy because one fang points up and one fang points down, and you know, bad dental hygiene or something. But there's like 113 symbols on this character. But he's engulfed in flames that actually come from his core, holding a sword in one hand, a rope in the other, and that kind of thing. But on this in this training and on this mandala, Fudo, my teacher taught me that Fudo is neither Buddha or Bodhisattva. Again, Buddha being a mindset, perspective, that kind of thing, universal truth, and a Bodhisattva being the activity that comes from that. But I think he is. I think he's the world around us as the activity, right, of ultimate truth. And so, but Fudo, you're not going to see this flaming guy walking around the street with a sword and a rope and all that, right? Fudo represents the world in in a moment when you're just like going along and your BS is working. That's belief system. Can mean the other thing too, but anyway, your BS is working, and you just kind of moving through the world doing whatever, and all of a sudden it's not doing what it normally does, and it's a moment that wakes you up, right, uh, to pay attention. And then the rest of the path, for the first probably third of the path, it's like if you ever seen the old Matrix movies, right? You have red pill, blue pill moments, right? And after that, well, there's a couple of stages where you want to go back, but you can't because I don't want to be like that anymore. And then the rest of it is you just stop thinking that way. But again, the way I tend to title these things, a lot of people roll their eyes, they don't want to pay attention or whatever. But it's to do that thing, right? It's to shake and wake, so to speak, right? For a lot of folks, especially in ninjutsu, especially in the martial arts, but especially in Bujinkan Ninjutsu, kanji, Japanese terminology, that kind of stuff, that just reaches out like, oh, it's like candy in a candy store kind of thing, right? Either way, right? So that's why the title says Kyusho is not what you think, right? It's beyond pressure points, beyond pressure points to real control. But where I'm really going with this is why pain compliance is a bad tactic. Why pain compliance fails, and how and why real ninjutsu targets more than the body, more than the nerve system that people think of, right, to get this kind of compliance. All right. So anyway, right, we've already done our welcome and all that wonderful stuff. So just keep on moving, right? So again, as usual, right, this is the theme for the week, right? So this is our lead in to the week's deeper physical training, right? So Whiteboard Wednesday and the Friday Masterclass will be going into Whiteboard Wednesday, as always, is the strategy and tactics lecture kind of thing, right? The juice behind the physical techniques. And then Friday Masterclass, that's when we'll be taking a look at the physical techniques. But again, during this episode, we're not just going to talk about Kyusho from a tactical level, right? But also as a strategic and life level concept that when it's not understood properly, right? When it's misunderstood, it leads to failure, or at best, like playing the lottery, okay? In combat and beyond, right? So let's start with what Kyusho really means, what the word Kyusho really means. Okay. So for those of you taking notes, Kyusho, spelled Kyu, it's a long U, SHO, using Romaji, using the English language alphabet. Okay. So Kyusho, right? The U is just held longer. Sometimes you might see it written KYUU. SHO, depending on if you're using the Hepburn system or one of these other Japanese translation systems for English. Okay, so if anybody still has the screen or whatever that has the artwork that I put on there, right, there are two stacked kanji in red, maroon, something like that. That's Kyusho, right? So Q, right, that kanji, which by the way has the kanji for kokoro, Shin Kokoro, heart, right, at its base, the same base that's forms the bottom half of the nin kanji. Okay, interesting, right? So Q, this kanji can mean urgent, it can mean sudden, it can mean critical, right? We'll talk about a couple of other ones here in a minute. Just a good place to start, right? Urgent, sudden, critical. Okay, there's nothing there about pressure. There's nothing there. Okay. Keep that in mind, right? The second half, sho, right? That kanji can mean place. And for now, it can mean location. So by extension, it can mean point. Okay. So generally, right, we could look at Kyusho as a critical point or as a vital location, but not a pressure point. Okay. Now, could we by extension say, well, if we apply pressure, if we apply stress, if we apply something that this point or location isn't designed for, right? If we could target that point with an appropriate um, uh, yeah, pressure, right? Well, then couldn't we call it? Well, you can call it whatever you want as long as you understand what you're saying. But to most people, pressure means pushing on something, and point is a dot, right? As opposed to could be a region, could be a nerve path, could be a muscular chain, could be somebody's needs or uh, uh, like life weaknesses, addictions, those kind of things, right? And addictions are not always drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's a place to start, right? But um, it 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 can be translated as vital point or critical point or weak point. I was taught to translate Kyusho as a weak point. But again, a lot of these Japanese words, right? It's not black and white. Okay. It's really dependent on context because once we know what Kyusho are and we know the four or so categories of Kyusho just physiologically, then we start to get a better understanding of what it is that we're talking about. Okay. So again, Kyusho can be translated as vital point, critical point, weak point, or location, region, that kind of thing, right? Again, depending on context. Okay. And so again, if we break it down again, Q, just the Q part, right? First part. Um, urgent, sudden, critical. This implies something that requires immediate attention or something that carries a lot of importance. Okay. Like if it's not functioning well, or you don't have it, or uh, uh, it's inhibited, there's a problem. Okay. Car runs out of gas, right? That's a problem. Okay. Um, anyway, so, and then show again, place, location, spot. You get the idea, right? So, Kyusho can also literally mean a critical place. And in martial arts, in Budo, that in and of itself can refer to a vital spot, right? Um, when I say vital spot, right, again, going to that thing that if it's not there, right, it's a critical piece, it's a critical uh, intersection or whatever, right? Um, what we're looking at here is this spot or this location, whatever, right? Um, being vital, right? It can disable, it can disorient, or it can incapacitate. Okay, so we're still in the ballpark with what people tend to mean, but again, hold in your head this thing that I see as a problem, and that is equating these things with pain compliance. Okay, um, and that therein lies a problem. Right. So anyway, all right. So it can also refer to a structural weakness. Okay. What I'm talking about is a point or a place uh, when pressure or torque is applied, the body or the body part collapses. Okay. So it comes apart, right? Well, I bet that'd be painful. Well, you would think, but I'm going to give you at least 3 different conditions during this episode. Again, we'll dive into some other ones in the full program where, yeah, no, and in some conditions, it could actually do the opposite. So again, staying with martial arts, staying with Budo, right? But also starting to extend out into life as well, or relationships or whatever, right? Kyusho can also refer to an opening, right? Mental or emotional, something that's strategically exploitable. Okay. This doesn't require touching somebody at all, not in the physical or physiological sense. Okay. And it can also even refer to a personal weakness, as in a mindset, somebody's level of predictability in or around a given kind of situation or context, or their attachment to something. Okay. So the term weak point that I was taught, right? I mean, a valid translation, right? But again, it's one way to look at it. Okay. And when you hear me speaking about Kyusho, I will almost always translate Kyusho as a weak point because it's, to me, it's a broader translation. Now, again, can you use pressure point? Yeah, of course. Once you understand what we're talking about, right? Are we applying pressure? Yeah. What kind? Okay. We need to get away from the baby steps kind of thing, right? Where, you know, things are always fixed. They're always just one thing, right? Because it doesn't know any better, right? So we need to move away from, I don't know, 6-year-old slap fighting in a sandbox kind of perspective. Okay. So from the perspective of weak point, right? If we look at a couple based on, we'll call it, I hate using like body, mind, and spirit because spirit really kind of throws things off. It's more of kind of an energy dynamic kind of thing. Well, you'll see, right? So weak points, right? If the emphasis is on structure, right? So now we're talking about like joints, right? Or specific points on the body, right? A joint or the eyeball, whatever, right? Okay. But there could also be an emphasis on psychology, right? So mental or emotional vulnerabilities, those kind of things. Okay. But there's also dynamic weak points, right? Timing and rhythm, these kind of things, right? When someone is off guard or distracted, okay? The Togakure Ninja, there's lessons in the Gogyo, the 5 elemental transformations from a tactical standpoint that teach like when's the best time to infiltrate an area where you can't get in any other time or any other way, but you have a patrolling guard, right, or a guard that's standing on guard duty. Okay, there are 2 points during their shift that they are much more like highly alert, and this is this is without them like hearing a noise or whatever. Mentally, they are just jacked and alert. Okay. Beginning a shift and end a shift. Okay. There's a secondary one if it's a routine time, and that would be when the sergeant of the guard is passing through mid shift. Right. they want to make sure they look like they're doing their job. Okay. And then there are two primary times when they're mentally fatigued uh, or numb or just there's more of a lull going on because of boredom, because of redundancy, right? How many times you got to walk past the same freaking tree? If you're patrolling, right? They're daydreaming, those kind of things, right? So anyway, this is not the class for that, but it's that kind of thing, right? So, but when is someone off guard? When is someone distracted? Those kind of things, right? In fact, Takuma Sensei often described Kyusho in both physical and strategic terms. He used to refer to them as points of collapse in both body and intention. Okay. And again, we've talked about this over the last couple of episodes, last couple of weeks, where we're talking about making things collapse, okay? Making pulling that critical card out from their house of cards, right? And getting things to fall down. Okay. So for this episode, and just generally speaking, right? I think it's not just because I made it, or this is how I put it together and how I see it, but this is a good foundation if you really want to get a handle on Kyusho, right? In a more concise way, right? So you could think about Kyusho meaning critical point, weak point, that kind of thing, but physically, mentally, or structurally, where the enemy, the opponent, can be broken, redirected, or controlled. Okay. Sometimes that's a nerve. Sometimes it's a joint. And sometimes it's a moment in their mind. Okay. So, again, I think, I mean, it's my responsibility to convey this stuff as correctly as possible, but the sooner you can get away from Kyusho being pressure points, the sooner you can get yourself into a higher level of thinking and moving your training to a much, much higher level of skill proficiency, because you'll be thinking less about the physical doing and more about the strategic application, right? The control. Okay. That's really where we're going with this. So let me jump back onto my screen here. James, any questions or comments pop up with regards to anything I covered to that point? That was the boring stuff. Not to me, but otherwise wouldn't have spent so much time on it. Anyway, questions, comments?
No, sir. Nothing yet.
Was that before or after you filtered out? No? Okay.
No filtering needed yet.
Okay, good. But there's a disturbance in the force, and, well, they're all over the place. But anyway, we'll see if that person shows up again tonight. Huh? Okay, so again, let's just continue on with this just a little bit from the perspective of why, quote unquote, pressure point, right, is a problematic translation. Okay. What I've come to find, again, this is my opinion based on my experience, based on my observations. Okay. If yours are different, by all means, run with yours. I'm just here to, do the Dai-Shihan Miller trip kind of thing. Right. But by and large, I have found that Western martial arts, and I don't mean martial arts that were invented in the West, but right, hybrids and all that kind of stuff. But the way Western martial artists tend to translate things and see things, right? They often reduce everything to, especially in this realm, right, to nerves or what we might call acupoints, right? Acupressure, acupuncture, that kind of stuff, right? But again, Kyusho encompasses more, right? The concept of Kyusho again, to take this farther, right? So that you just trying to drive this point home. It includes, again, let's keep going with this Takamatsu Sensei quote about collapse, about making something break, collapse, or fall apart. Okay, so the concept of Kyusho includes structural collapse points, like the shoulder. Okay, think onikudaki, mushadori, those kind of things. The neck, the hips. These things are critical, right, for support. The neck is critical, not just as a support post for the skull, but the amount of tubing and wiring that moves through this thing, right? If shit gets kinked, or if it's broken, non-functioning, that kind of thing, right? You disconnect things to the brain or to the rest of the body, those kind of things, right? Your hips, or more specifically, your waist area, okay? WAIST, not the other type of waist. um, th- One time, one of the teachers, who said that? Nagato Sensei, maybe? We were talking about kansetsu waza, right? Joint locks, joint disruption, those kind of things. And he pointed to the hips and the waist, and he said, it's the biggest joint in your body, right? Okay. But nobody ever thinks of the hips or the waist as a joint. They think of the hips as in like the ball and socket joints where the femurs plug in to the iliac crest, of the pelvis, right? But I'm talking about above the ridge of the pelvic bone on the lumbar side, right? It's the biggest joint you have. Okay. If I do an uragyaku beginner style, so my partner can do a forward roll, my partner bends forward at the waist, effectively neutralizing 2/3 of that gyakute until they run out of space, but they can just topple and roll, right? So how do I control that, right? I want to get things to jam up or collapse, okay? But again, these are just a couple of points, right? Shoulder, neck, hips, structural collapse points, okay? Um, the concept of Kyusho, again, also includes breathing disruption, okay? So we've got areas that we can attack anywhere along the godin, right? So we're creating diaphragmatic spasms, right? We're hitting the diaphragm, okay, or the throat, or the solar plexus, or anything that will stall, stun, or shut down the breathing. Okay, we don't have to puncture the lungs to make that happen. Okay, it includes neurological overrides. Okay, hitting the mandible, right, the TMJ, occipital nerve inside the wrist, these kind of things, right? Neurological, I've already mentioned that. Emotional and cognitive control points. Okay, so voice, rhythm, movement patterns, those kind of things. Okay, so um, one of my teachers said, thinking that Kyusho are magic buttons is why so many people, so many students get disillusioned, right? Um, Couple that with all these jackwagons that are out there doing, like, I've got a magical finger and I can make you bounce around in space kind of thing, right? It's not about tricks. It's about targeting, and it's about timing. Okay. Um, some of my guys have been around for a long time in the dojo. I haven't said it in a long, long time, but we used to have this catch-all phrase that when somebody would, like, they're having a problem with something, and it's not physical, right? It's not the fact that you're stepping incorrectly, or your knee's not bent correctly, or your hip's not over your foot, or your structure's not right, or whatever, right? We just look over and go, it's a timing thing. And it would just irritate the crap out of most people because, right, they want it to be like, tell me where to step with my foot. I can tell you where to step with your foot, but if you do it at the wrong time, well, you get punched in the face. Okay? Or if you move your foot without first making sure that your hips and knees are driving that movement pattern, right? Your hips, knees, and ankles aren't moving in relationship to each other with a certain type of rhythm or coordination, you die. Okay. So, again, it's been my experience, right, that many cops and security professionals are disillusioned about Kyusho because of this, what I'm going to call the pain compliance trap. Right. So, without beating that more to death, let's dive into this pain compliance thing, this illusion of compliance based control. Okay. Again, I'm not saying that there aren't Kyusho that hurt and you can get pain compliance. What I'm telling you is that that is not the end all to be all, or the end all to beat all of this art. And it one, it shouldn't be, but there's lots of reasons why that's even the ones that hurt, even the ones that you would normally get pain compliance, why and how they can fail. If you don't know that part, that Kyusho or atemi, sometimes, striking, um, uh, vital points and whatnot. Um, that's a weapon just like any other weapon. And Natsumi Sensei has taught again and again and again over the years that one has not mastered a weapon, any weapon, right? Bow, hanbo, knife, sword, boshiken, whatever, hasn't mastered that weapon until they have also learned how to beat it. Right? They haven't mastered it just because they learned it. Right? That's only half of it. Right? Until they learn how to beat it, then they haven't mastered anything. Okay. So let's start by just talking briefly about something that I inherited this from one or two of my teachers. That we used to call this. There's this dreaded disease that occurs in the dojo, and if we're not careful, it's highly communicable. Okay? That means anybody can get it, and if everybody gets it, well, then you're all fucked. Okay? We call it dojo syndrome, okay? And what that means is it's going to work in the dojo, and everybody, because they're all a member of the same mutual admiration society, right? Training tends to be bent or warped to fit certain belief systems or certain sensitivities or whatever. Okay. And dojo syndrome can show up many, many different ways. Right. So, but since we're talking about Kyusho, we'll talk about how it shows up with this. Okay. In the context of the danger of pain compliance, or this trap, this belief that this is what's going on. Okay. So here's where I want to start with this, right? This illusion of compliance-based control. Right? If I touch somebody a certain way, if I act on them a certain way or whatever, they're going to do what I want. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay. Now, the more we can learn about physiology and the more we can learn about anatomy and how the shit's wired together and how these different things work and whatnot, right? The more we can learn about different personality types and not be trapped in our own egocentric world where transference rules the day. Transference is where we transfer our own belief system and how we would do things and what we believe about something or whatever to other people, assuming that they do, can, or think, or should think, act, and believe the way we do. And therein lies the reason that human beings can't get along. So anyway, we need to understand that while the body's built a certain way, there are right? There are factors, there are variables, right? This is not a one-off or on or off kind of thing, right? So that's where we'll start. We'll start with this illusion of compliance-based control, and the reality that pain doesn't always work. And when I say it doesn't always work, I mean sometimes it doesn't work, like the person can't feel pain. Okay. Like somebody who's drugged. Okay. They're on meth, PCP, drunk off their ass. Right. Um, they, these things create a neurological problem. Some people, I know a couple of people that actually have certain types of neurological issues. Okay. Now, um, I have, I think I mentioned this in a previous class at some point, because of an accident that I was in back in late '07. Yeah, late '07. Um, Whiplash injuries on my spine, two of them, um, that I still have nerve damage. And so one of the areas that is uh, almost entirely numb, right, on the surface is the outside side forward quadrant of my right thigh. Right. And so I know that I'm touching it when I'm touching it, but I'm getting a weird feel like from the underside, like from the muscle or from the skin around it moving. Some days are better than others. Like today, I can feel more. Like I can feel a sensation on the skin. Other days, yeah, nope. Uh, it's numb. Okay. So if somebody were hitting that point to get a pain response, not going to happen. But if they know what they're doing and they hit a spot in that region, my hips and knee will collapse because it's not dependent upon pain. Okay. And there's a difference here, okay? Which is a big part of what this upcoming course is about and what the study of Kyusho is about, if we can get past this pain thing, right? But the first thing, like with these people that have a neurological disorder, right, we're born this way. Okay. So they don't feel pain the same way or to the same degree or at all. Okay. But just one of these categories, just if the person's normal, okay, drugs, alcohol, those kind of things to certain degrees, it's not turning off or changing like the connections and whatnot, right? It is slowing, inhibiting, or disconnecting the neurological feedback loop between that region and the brain and how it gets processed for this stuff to light up, right? Sometimes it has to go to the brain, sometimes it doesn't. But the more we can cut that loop out of the loop, right? The better or more reliable effects we're going to get. But if we're just looking for pain, then therein lies the illusion, right? Okay. So again, one of the reasons that pain doesn't always work is because of drugs or alcohol or whatever. Okay. Another reason that pain doesn't always work is somebody is emotionally unstable or enraged, right? The adrenal dump, right? The amount of adrenaline, norepinephrine, epinephrine, all these drugs that the hypothalamus has dropped into the system, right? And cause the person to like hulk out. Okay. So if you've ever been in an accident, okay, um, and I don't care what kind, car accident or whatever, right? But you were just like jacked all of a sudden, right? And then what do they always do? They come to you and, are you hurt? Do you need any help? Do you want to go to the hospital? No, 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 I'm fine. I'm just a little dazed or whatever. Okay. So are you sure? Yes. Okay. You're not bleeding, whatever. Okay. And then the day after, or worse yet, the day after, you fucking feel like you got run over by a truck, right? And like, where the hell did all that come from? Okay. Well, it's because the adrenal response mask this stuff. And that can happen, again, either from being enraged or being in this traumatic moment, right? That's an emotional instability. Or the person's literally fucking unstable. Okay. They're highly distressed, whatever, right? They're having an emotional meltdown, those kind of things. Okay. This can disrupt not motor function, it disrupts the recognition uh, of pain. Like, and pain, what is pain? Pain is the body's defense mechanism that warns of impending danger, right? There's a threat to the body. I mean, sometimes the pain is, ow, the body's already been hit, shit, right? Or there's something wrong, right? And so something hurts. Or, um, uh, something bumped into it. And if it bumps into it harder, right, that's going to be problematic. So, right. But pain, generally speaking, is a more of a danger sign. Okay. But we'll talk about one more, right? And that is high pain threshold individuals. Okay. I'm one of these people, right? And I can't pin it down to whether I am a high pain threshold individual, because I'm just naturally wired that when something needs to get done, or something needs to be fixed or whatever, uh, just let's just get it done. Okay. Every other Tuesday, I have a standing appointment with uh, Shoshi Whistler, my right hand man at the dojo, who is a body work specialist. He focuses on acupressure, and it's actually shiatsu, right, and this kind of stuff. But there's just certain things that if they're off, like I've gone to him because my psoas muscle, right, was just locked, right. If you don't know what that is, it's a butterfly, or half butterfly, half squid looking kind of muscle that attaches to the front face of your spinal column low. And then these tentacles go through your hip joint and attach to the inside of your thighs. It's the muscle that bends you in half in a pike position like this. Okay. Locked, hurt like hell. Right. Well, there's no way to really freaking unlock it without going through like the front gut and whatnot and getting in there and massaging it that way. Burns like a son of a bitch. Right. But unlike what he tells me, unlike 80 or 90% of his patients, he doesn't have to work into things for me. He knows it's going to hurt. I know it's going to hurt. Right. Just do it. If I have to, I'll do some breathing exercises or whatever. And we're going to get through it. Does that change the amount of pain? No, it changes my relationship to the pain. Okay. If there is a sudden spasmodic flinch, that's both of our signs that took it past the body's actual like threat limit. So I can control the body's flinch response. Okay. So there's two types of high pain threshold individuals. Ones who just naturally have a high pain threshold. So again, I don't know if I'm just on that side normally, or if because of military, law enforcement, that kind of stuff, I have been trained to and have trained myself to push through pain. Okay. So some people just naturally have a high pain threshold. Others just have a high will to continue regardless of the pain. Okay. There's another one I'm going to add on to this one, and that is the person who gets jacked because of pain. Okay. And that could be good or bad, right? Okay. We can't deny the masochist out there. Okay. Somebody gets a boner because it hurt. Okay. I know he said boner anyway, so, but there's something about that, right? I don't care if it's hot wax on the skin and or whatever, right? There's something that triggers for this person, right? Or they get jacked because when you cause a pain response, that jacks up the adrenal response, and they punch you harder or want to kill you in a more in a worse way. Okay. So again, right. If we're tagging on things, and so this is one of the reasons why, like when we're teaching mod 1 students, like we're introducing them to Kyusho, and let's say we were teaching them the Nagore point, right? That's right here on the backside of the forearm, up near the elbow. It's about 2 fingers down from the crook of the elbow, right? This Nagore point. If they press on that, like don't do what people do in freaking self-defense classes all the time. Let's say we have a cross-side wrist grab kind of thing, and so we always shift to a safe point. You don't go dink, because if he's gets pissed off because that hurt, he's gonna hit you harder and you're on the line of fire. So there's always tactical maneuvering to make any possible follow-up from a failed attempt end your day, right? So, but people will often, right? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? Fucking yeah, it hurts, right? So what I always tell students is, look, you hit that point. If you don't get a response, then immediately do something else. You don't fucking hang out, right? And this is what I mean by dojo syndrome. Okay, dojo syndrome is your partner just and there's times when you're learning it, right? So your partner, if we're talking about, look, you need to find it. So your partner's going to sacrifice. That's what ukemi means. I'm sorry, uke, right? They're a receiver of the technique. They're sacrificing for the cause, right? So is that okay? But there's other times where we're working it as a self-defense technique. So you get a shot, you get one attempt, okay? And so I hit this. If my partner's elbow or shoulder don't shift, they don't move, right? Then I don't try to press it again. I don't look at them for validation as to whether or not it worked. I know what's supposed to work up the chain, okay? Or what it's supposed to feel like at the wrist when I hit that, okay? And so I hit this, nothing happens, immediately, bang, Shuto goes to the neck or the face or something as a minimum as a distraction, so I get the fuck out of there, or I can get its hand to open up a different way, right? I don't keep, right? And that's, again, this is this thing. If this is the way we always train in the dojo, this is what's getting wired into subconscious, unconscious memory. And so this is the bullshit we're going to try when somebody's trying to beat, break, or kill us, right? Now, I don't mean that you need to jump on that first off, because if a student hasn't found it, well, then how the hell are you going to hit it? Right? So we have to learn the contour of the land. We have to know where the point is. We have to be able to find it based on feel and touch alone, not, right? It would also be very, very helpful. And I tell students this all the time, right? There's lots of reasons why this wouldn't work. Okay. One of the things that I didn't list that we would talk about in a different program is someone's occupation. Okay. And or life experience. What I mean by that is accidents or where they live, right? And how weather can affect the toughness and thickness of the skin, or the type of occupation they have and how that would build up either calluses or muscle, or just put a hard freaking muscle in the way. Everybody thinks it's like we're hitting a nerve or hitting a muscle or whatever. Which one is it? Okay. Because with this one specifically, it depends on what it is that you're targeting as to whether you're going to get one type of response or another. Okay. Most people think it's the muscle, which it is. And the harder he grabs, the more sensitive that is. Unless he's a carpenter or somebody that works his arms in that kind of fashion, where this big ass lump forms right here, right? I mean, martial artists, generally speaking, end up with this channel right here because of this constant working, right? But people that do this gets really, really big, and there's an area over here that gets thicker. And it's, if you don't know that, you could end up trying to target a Kyusho that his body already tells me, no, there's going to be a better one to go after, or something like that, right? So anyway, we try to hit it. You get one shot. If it doesn't, then you go on to this next thing. So we give them bailouts and whatnot, but we talk about why they wouldn't work. Okay. Because I don't want people to be delusional that one, it's going to always work. And two, that they're going to, I don't want them falling into the trap of, just, I'm going to keep testing it, looking for a flinch response or looking for a pain response when, right, either he's going to feel nothing and I'm wasting time, which means I'm a sitting duck because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. Or I hit it and see, this is the big thing that throws people off. Pain equals compliance. No, it doesn't. Pain equals response. I either get none, or if I get a response, did I get a fight or flight response? Did I get a pull it away from me because I'm in danger and I break his will to fight? Or did that pain cause him to want to hit me harder? Okay. He was going to punch me and now, fuck it, I'm just going to pull a knife and stick it in your throat. Okay. So got to be really, really careful with this, right? Really, really careful. There's lots of examples we play around with this, but either way, right? Okay. So here's some other examples of this dojo syndrome. This, I call it a nasty disease, right? But this dojo syndrome, right? And again, there's times for these things. So I'm not saying not to do them. There's phases, just like the Shuhari model, the Shingi Tai model. There are these different classical models for training that all come at things in a 3-phase kind of framework that they're all necessary at certain points. But if we hold on to them, well, then we're an accomplice to our own ass kicking eventually down the line. Okay. So one example of dojo syndrome in the dojo is that everybody in class lets you succeed. Okay. There's a phase for that. Okay. Because you're learning. And so we're going to ignore 90% of the mistakes that are made because we can't throw everything at you. This is a sign of a really shitty teacher. I used to be one of them where a student would get something right and I'd throw 2 more wrongs at him. Right. And eventually they would quit because, look, what's the point? I'm never going to figure this out anyway. Okay. So anyway, but if it's what I call the mutual admiration society, where everybody's helping everybody be successful, and there's, soft training should never hurt. That's bullshit. Okay. A properly applied technique, even slowly, there's going to be some discomfort. Supposed to be. You're putting the body in a weird position, or you're tagging, like I can lightly touch this Kimon point right here. And there is a freaking burning sensation, not big, but it's uncomfortable and it radiates to my shoulder, but I don't want to hit it too many more times or too hard because it's the phrenic nerve and it'll disrupt my breathing. Okay. So kind of fucked up. I don't want to do that. Okay. Another aspect of dojo syndrome is the belief that if you press and they comply, right, you think it works until it doesn't. Okay. Press on me. And, again, I have a very high pain tolerance. Right. I remember one time I was training at Issuk Sensei's dojo in Japan, and he was teaching a technique that used this Nagare point. Right. I'm like, oh, okay. But I don't play the, like I know that point. And so I disconnect my brain. Oh, I know that one. Okay. No. I'm in a senior master teacher. At that time, I didn't know would be a future soke, whatever. Right. In his dojo, I move forward because I want to see if, like, there's something about this point or how to access this point that could make what I already know better, right? And so he's doing this stuff and he's looking around and I go, Sensei, experience? Oh, he loves that word. He loved using it. And he loved it if a student said, please, experience. Big old smile lights up on his face, right? Anyway, he hits this point because I want to feel, right? I want to feel if this is different, right? And he hits this point and I go, yeah, right? And he says, yes. And I said, Yes. And people go, does he have it? Did he? Right? Yeah, he fucking has it. Right? And they're like, does it hurt? Yeah, it hurts. Wow, you must be really strong. Nope, it's just pain. And he stops and big old smile. That's right. That's just right. So we can't think that just because we fucking right. And it caused a flinch response. But up here, what people weren't paying attention to is they were paying attention to like everybody when he pressed on the freaking arm, like that, they're like going nuts and shit. They're pulling their arm away and whatnot. And then people are running around grabbing their phones and stuff to take a picture of the point. These people are like upper level black belts. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him like, where the fuck have these people been? Right? This is like something you learn very early on. At least I did, right? And my students learn it in Mod 1, right? But they're taking pictures of it. So either way, they're all jumping around, right? And so they're like, we didn't see you flinch. Well, then you weren't looking at the right spot because my body wants to get my arm to go away from his grip, which is fine, but I don't want to go anywhere. So I relax my shoulder joint, right, to release the tension on the nerve pathways, right? So it localizes more. But I'm also not going to make a fist, and I'm not going to tighten up certain muscles that are going to cause this area to tense up because that'll exacerbate the pain. I'm not going to do that. Okay. But anyway, some of you guys know, James, some of you other ones know that if you change the direction of the pressure, you change the direction of the flinch response that's going on, right? But either way, right? So it's just one of those things where if somebody hit that point on me, right? If I tense up because it hurts, now I can't move to get at him as well. But if I train that when he hits it, I relax because it helps to negate some of the pain, and now my shoulder's not locked up, so I can punch them in the face and make them let go, or punch them in the throat. Then we have okay. So again, just because they comply doesn't mean that they're not just waiting for that right moment for you to drop your guard or get like overconfident, or for you to shift into a position where they can grab or hit something on you. Okay. Let's see. Another reflection of dojo syndrome is having a sensitive or tentative uke. What I mean by that is somebody who's pain averse. Okay. They already don't want to be touched. Right. I walk to some students. I'm like, okay. Because I want them to feel where it is, and I want them to feel what it feels like. So they can find it on their partner. Right. And as soon as I reach out for some people, okay. So they're either squeamish or whatever. They want to learn this stuff, but if I could learn it without feeling any pain, that'd be really awesome, Sensei. You do know what we're studying for, right? Okay. If you're not willing to put up with pain in the dojo, you're probably going to fucking crumble the first time somebody makes you hurt on the street. Just saying. Now, it's not a guarantee. But anyway, right? So this allows for a sense of false confidence. Right? Because I don't have to push very hard. My partner's going to start and I'm going to think, oh, okay, I only need that much. But man, that's really fucking magical. Wow. Okay. Except that this guy's just like doesn't want to get tagged. Right. And I don't mean like we're cranking down on anything. I just mean that they're, kind of they're sensitive for this stuff. Okay. Another aspect of dojo syndrome is, we tend to think of pain as a compliance strategy. Right? Pain is not a compliance strategy. Pain is a distractor or setup. Okay. If we get the pain response, but here's the cool thing, right? If I press on that point and he's cognizant, right? That means he's not drunk off his ass and has no idea what the hell I'm doing, right? or he's not so jacked on meth or whatever that like he's drilling on himself and pissing his pants, right? When I press on this, whether it hurts or not, where does his mind go? To that point. And the moment he realizes it doesn't hurt or it's a waste of time, he gets all smug. And so in the psychological gap between him looking to see what the hell I'm doing, nothing happens, and him getting all smug, I've already hit him twice, or I've done the next thing. So if I go for a point, this is going to sound odd. There's certain points that they don't do a lot for me to set things up. Okay. If I go for it, it's not a test. It's a distraction. It's a way to move his mind so he's not paying attention to the thing I'm really doing. In magician's terms, it's a misdirection. Okay. So here's what I learned from Shrey Sensei. Pain is a bonus. It's not a plan. Okay. If pain's your plan and your plan falls apart, you got nothing. You're going to be fighting like everybody else, and you will have wasted a whole bunch of time, effort, and money if you pay for training to get your ass beat just like everybody else on the street. Okay? Pain is a bonus. Pain is icing on the cake. It's not the damn cake. Okay? Bad analogy for some folks, but either way. Okay? So let's jump over here. We'll shift over to types of Kyusho here in a minute, but we jump over here. James, questions, comments?
No questions or comments. Just Greg from Australia jumped on, and so did Maui.
Awesome. Oh, you know what? At the dojo earlier, you and I were talking about, well, you were sharing some story. We were kind of talking back and forth about some of this. We weren't talking about it in the context of dojo syndrome, but it was like that kind of idea. You were sharing a story of actually a knife attack. Because I said, didn't I just cover something like that a bunch of weeks ago where I had people moving around in Kamae to keep this guy always in front of you, right? Always within this realm, but to move in a way that wasn't two-dimensional, nose to nose, toe to toe, to move so that you got a panoramic vision or viewpoint of your environment over this guy's freaking shoulder, right? One, it keeps you unpredictable. But there was a story that you told. Did you see it on CCTV or something like that? There was a video that you saw.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about, the one I'm talking about. So why don't you share that story, because this is another example of what dojo syndrome will do, and this is a self-created, a self-induced Kyusho. It's a weak point, but it's a weak point. It's a strategic or tactical weak point, right? Vulnerability. And if it's attacked, if it's engaged, you collapse, right? Your whole thing collapsed, because this guy was doing well in the beginning, right? For at least the first second or two, right? And then like, okay. So why don't you share that story? Because that's, I'm gonna make you like share the screen. It's James. Anyway, so yeah.
So it was a CCTV footage from, looked like some kind of a storefront, might have been a convenience store or something, or whatever store, but it opened up onto a street sidewalk. It looked like the shopkeeper or whoever was trying to get some people to leave the premises for whatever reason.
Disperse.
Yeah, and there were some other people standing out front, but there was obviously one individual in particular. It was clear from body language and gestures and whatnot that he needed to leave, and the person he was trying to get to leave was not cooperating very much, and he's not really like physically manhandling them or anything like that, but he keeps moving into them, like moving. Like you need to leave, gesturing and moving himself as a barrier to push him out the door. And at one point, you see all of a sudden that somebody come running, looks like from somewhere on the sidewalk or across the road with a knife, and just comes running up and actually brandishes a knife. And then you can see the shopkeeper, look at him, and he actually takes this big, like, overhead stabbing slash kind of a thing at him. And the guy just sort of jumps back. He has his hands up. He misses
now, is this
that.
the guy that he's pushing out that jumps back that's being attacked, or is it the storekeeper?
The storekeeper jumps back because it appears that this guy's in with the one he's trying to get to leave.
Okay.
So
the attack is the initial attack is to the front.
Right. And then out of nowhere, you see this, and he sort of moves back forward again because now he's looking at this, and another guy comes. You just see him come from behind, from inside the store, is also apparently involved. I'm guessing it's one of these deals where it's multiple people go in and try to just like grab shit and run kind of deals. And he comes, just see him running through, has a knife in his hand, stabs right into the back of the shopkeeper, right at the base of his neck, traps area, sticks him, and doesn't even slow down, just goes right past him, bumps into him, sticks him. He runs, and then the other two take off as well. And now this guy's literally like holding onto a knife handle sticking out the back of his neck. But he was engaging with one and then two, and then the third was apparently unknown inside the store and just completely came up from nowhere, blindsided him. And there was, I don't know what happened. He was out in the sidewalk trying to pull the knife out of his back, literally.
But that's where the video probably cut off, right? Yeah, bastards. Anyways, but yet another one too. We were talking a couple of weeks ago. We had the theme for Zanshin, right? That awareness before, during, and after. And again, when we talk about these things, anytime that a teacher or a lesson, or you see a Hatsumi Sensei quote or whatever that's warning you about something, like something where you're paying attention or need to pay attention or be aware or whatever, right? They're highlighting a weak point. They're highlighting a potential weak point. If you're not guarding it, then you're leaving it open, right? I mean, it's just the way it is, right? And so, I mean, one of the reasons for doing the fifth dan test, and this is a big thing that people screw up big time, right? The belief about the fifth dan test that it got you fifth dan, except it's the Saki test, right? Do you have minimum viable abilities in two directions? One, the ability to sense unseen danger, right? Just that somebody's trying to crack the shit out of you, right? And the ability to move your body out of the space you're in one move. I don't care if it's a roll, shift, whatever, right? But the way I was trained and the way I was taught about that was that it is, yes, it's a benchmark, right? But it's the entry, it's the gate, it's the tori into a whole next level of training where that's supposed to lead all the time, right? So there's Zanshin, but that tends to be situational and things like that, right? Where a couple of weeks ago when we were covering it, I think my focus was on not dropping your damn guard just because the technique was over, just because the guy went to the ground or whatever in training, right? Another form of dojo syndrome, right? But we want that to, with continual training and continual exposure, to turn into what's known as Heijoshin. For anybody that has the Seishin Teki Kyoyo book, this is the two elements that are in there. Heijoshin is normally translated as ordinary mind, everyday mind, that kind of thing, where it's security, high, like combat operators, cops that are working in bad places and things like that, that are, everything is, it's a constant kind of thing. It seems like your spidey senses just get better and better and better. But it becomes an everyday thing. It just becomes, you don't have to turn it on and off. It's just, right. You're just naturally more aware, right? You walked in today and I said, did you get another haircut, or you just have it laying differently? Right. Most people fucking pay attention. Women complain all the time. Their guy, did you get your haircut? Yeah. Like a week and a half ago. right? Or 2 months ago, or which time? This is the third one since you asked me the last time, right? So if it's not a bomb exploding, then like, well, I don't know, whatever. Okay. So, um, but there was that second incident you talked about that was at the train station. Remember that?
Oh, right. Yep.
Where the guy, he just thought he was apologizing, moving on with his day,
Mm-hmm.
and shit went sideways. Right. So why don't you tell that story too, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Because
That
again,
one
these are
was
all reflections of dojo syndrome. The question is not when did the story that James told happen to you, or to watch out for that particular thing, but how does your training, when all we're focusing on is technique, or rolling or whatever, how is that leaving you exposed to danger because certain types of, I call them invisible skills or soft skills, they're just not being touched on. They're not being, you're just left to hopefully develop things on your own. But if the training environment doesn't allow for that to be nurtured, then what? Right. So, a shit ton of kata, a shit ton of techniques. Your taijutsu is great, but your overall survivability or ability to survive in bad situations suck wankers. So, anyway, I don't know if that's the right terminology or not, but hey, there you go. I'm trying to be inclusive. So, anyway, all right, so tell the second story at the train station.
So that one was some for Subway somewhere. It could have been New York City or wherever. But again, it was a CCTV thing from the terminal there. Guy gets off. He's probably like 20 somewhere, mid to late 20s. You see him getting off the train. I said he has that kind of hood kind of look. I mean, it was a white guy, but he was dressed like more of the street kind of thing. Has a backpack on, but he goes and over to the steps that go up to the top, and just as he rounds the corner of the steps, you see another guy come down, just white dude, but he's a little more dressed up, like business casual at the very least, button-up shirt and stuff. But he's got a backpack on, but you can see he's in a hurry, like most likely trying to catch a train before it's leaving. And they happen to like just round the corner at the same time, bump shoulders.
Happens all the time, right?
He just, yeah. And you would, well, I would think in especially like in big cities, I mean, you're just used to, especially in subways and things like that, contact is just kind of normal. Most people would probably just brush it off. And this guy just sort of threw his hand up, gave him a glance. It looked like, sorry about that. Sure. And just goes right on trucking over to the subway. And the guy, the younger guy that got off originally, yeah, sure. Turned around and looked and just had this like look of like, what the fuck? And like drops his backpack and just immediately starts heading straight for the guy who's right near the door to a train. And as he's going, you see him reach into his jacket, pulls a knife, goes right up behind the guy and just sticks him from behind, right in the side of the neck, just once, just pops him, pulls the knife, and he comes right back. And as he's coming back, he just pops it back into his pocket, grabs his backpack, and heads right up the steps. And the guy that got stabbed is standing there, like
trying to figure out
what the hell just happened. Yeah, and it cut off. But yeah, it was obviously one guy was predisposed with where he was going or what he was doing, about to miss his train, and this other guy took extreme offense apparently to getting bumped into, and potentially ruined this guy's day, if not all of his days.
Hell of a day.
With
yeah, not the place to have a knife inserted. Right. I mean, depending on which side of the combat side you're on, right? Yeah. So, sure. Yeah, I'd say cool stories, but these are the kind of things that people should be that are self-defense oriented, that should spend more of their time watching and evaluating than just scrolling technique videos, because techniques outside of context are just choreographed movements. They have no context, right? Watching real life attacks tells you how you better be training, what you need to be on the lookout for, those kind of things, right? It forms your basis and foundation for survivability, as opposed to just learning techniques. Do you need techniques? Of course. Techniques at their base, right? I mean, we teach in Mod 1, we teach people that like your technique or your kata. I don't care if it's a kata with a name that came off a scroll, or it's something the teacher's demonstrating in that particular class, right? That should be seen as an expert role model, right? You want to be an expert. Here's how an expert would do it. Okay. In this bubble, right? It's a potential in this bubble. Later on, we flip it, right, to where kata or techniques are bad habit breakers, because the kata or the technique, right, the teacher's been able to do it, seniors can do it. If it's a kata, it's survived how many decades or hundreds of years, right? So if we can't do it, right, playing the bullshit Henka game is just a sign that there's something wrong with your taijutsu. You can't fucking do it, right? So it's not the kata, right? But there's a transitional stage beyond that, where we transcend the kata to where, like Hatsumi Sensei, we've had a conversation, or I've gotten it through other teachers, had that same kind of conversation with Hatsumi Sensei, where they'll be talking about two different ways that like a given kata can be done. And so, okay, we'll say, well, I do it like this. Okay. And it's because of other things that he's learned. But he'll look at you and he'll go, but I want you to do it like this, right? The way the kata is written at the moment, because until you understand how to do that and what it takes to do this other thing, because as you transition, you learn what training wheels can be taken off that kata, right? So anyway, cool stories, right? And when I say cool, I don't mean like, wow. What I mean is perfectly reflect this idea of how we have to be careful that dojo syndrome isn't allowing to kind of filter into things. So thanks, I appreciate that. All right, any questions or comments on anything that we've covered so far? So I'm going to fly through the next couple of things here.
Mommy said that's a great analogy. Pain is a bonus, not the plan. Most will seek for pain.
Yeah, and then you're often fucking surprised when you don't get it. Right. You could feel, pain could happen. It just might not happen in the direction that we planned, right?
And Greg said, Mike Tyson quote, everything is good until you get punched in the face.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we were talking about the Mike Tyson thing, right? And if you ever watch the video, because you and I were talking about biting, and people just do not maximize on that kind of stuff, because sometimes there's situations you can't fucking get out of. And so, but people want to bite to make somebody let go. But again, they're hedging their bets on the pain response, right? Or that fear of being bitten. But the biter often has like a cognitive dissonance going on, where they want to use the bite to produce a result, but there's a visceral roadblock to biting, right? Because they don't want this guy's blood in his mouth, or they don't want to, they don't want to scar another human, whatever, right? Because you were talking about that the Russian and Ukrainian fighters that were like knife fighting, and one ended up dying. But the commitment to things, right? Just anyway, to not have this thing drag out longer and longer. So let's take a look at just a couple of types of Kyusho, where we want to move away from just thinking of things as pressure, right? As pressing on things, right? That's only one type. Okay. So again, in that earlier, way earlier episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, I broke these things down. I actually listed 5, and then we eliminated one because one was using most of the Kyusho that most people think of for pain compliance. Okay. And I'm talking about the ones that are muscular and nerve oriented or located. We eliminated group 5 because that was for medicinal purposes, healing purposes. Okay. So pressing Kyusho. Okay. It's fine, right? Omote-gyaku, ura-gyaku, sometimes on different lists, they're reversed. Ryomon, whatever, right? But there's also Kyusho weak points, right? That have to be struck. Now, some you can press or you can strike, like this Kimon point, right? I drive into that or I can slam into it. Doesn't matter, right? I'm going to stall the nerve function that runs between the brain up behind the mastoid process down to that makes that side of the diaphragm work, right? So I disrupt his breathing rhythm. Well, you can call it disruption, but anyway, right? But other things, like most people don't realize that bones have like a nerve structure, and then there's the fascia, this neuro net that interconnects the different parts of the body and whatnot, right? But striking certain things, okay, striking hoshi, right, this gyokoryu kind of thing, right, striking this. You can also press on hoshi, sugetsu, tenmon, different points, right? But there's points on the body that you can press on and it's mildly uncomfortable, right? He's going to wonder what the hell you're doing. It's irritating, right? But if I strike it, oh, right, it's different if we're aiming for pain compliance, okay? But they're also joint and structural Kyusho, right? Think about dislocations, right? Think about things like what we might call axis breaks, right? Axis are where things cross, right? Where they come together, okay? So musodori, right? Where it looks like, the way a lot of people do it, it looks like they're attacking the elbow, but it's leverage to get the head of the humerus to come out of the shoulder joint and apply pressure to these bands that hold everything into place, right? But it's being tweaked and torqued in a way that it weakens things, right? It can't move well. Okay, musodori, onikudaki, that kind of thing, right? But dislocations as well. Think oya and kogorosh, right? This thing where you hyperflex the thumb joint to blow this joint out, right? It's not to this joint, it's to this joint, right? Or kogorosh, where you can be doing the same thing, but you can also apply pressure into the joint where the base of this metacarpal right here just separates from the main one, right? The hand bone from the finger bone kind of thing, right? That kind of thing, or any of these, right? Internal Kyusho, going after timing, breath, right? Mental disruption and whatnot. But again, when we're talking about striking things, one of the reasons behind the new Kyusho program that I'm going to be doing, and again, it's going to be in a couple of weeks because I have to get some other lessons finished up for those folks that are still waiting for some lessons to round out Mod 3 on our program. But the focus is on the Kyusho program is there will be some introductory things to pain compliance, but by lesson 2, right, we're going to be talking about pain is not a plan, okay? And a lot of this stuff will be in there, but what we're going to be talking about is a lot of that comes into play when we're talking about jutai jutsu or koshi jutsu or koppo jutsu, even the fundamental stuff that has these things in where we're striking something and I don't care if he feels pain or not, because there's a cascading collapse that occurs within the body, right? Or I'm hitting things in a way that causes soft tissue, right, damage. So now I've got inflammation going on, or I've got a shock to the system that he doesn't have to feel pain, right? It just literally disconnects things that are required for the next piece to work. Okay, it's kind of like kazushi, balance breaking, right? If I break the balance in a certain way, right? It doesn't matter what he wants to do with his limbs. His body will autonomically, right, as a flinch response, throw them out in a way to try to catch his balance to keep the body from falling over. So it doesn't matter what he wants to do with his arms. Okay. If he does anything with his arms to stay in the fight, he just helps his body fall over, which is fucking fine with me. But I also have to make sure that I stay with him or use that moment to run, because if he's good at ukemi, that's only going to last for a second. If it's if he crashes and burns, then I want to make sure he doesn't get up and chase me, which is why we tend to do things like using the feet, the side edge of the foot, like a shuto, right, onto certain small bone or sensitive areas on the foot, ankle, or lower leg. When somebody goes down, chop into that thing to create a stress fracture or to disrupt that system. So he can get up and he can try to chase me, but there's certain points that if you hit them, like, he doesn't know that he has a problem until he puts weight on it and fires that muscle, and then everything cascades and collapses. Some cool shit, right? But again, pain's nice, but it could go either way, right? So again, we could strike them, we could press them, we could work with the joint or the structural kind of thing where we're twisting it or maneuvering it in a way that weakens the system. And then there's other things too. So for anybody, speaking of mod 3, anybody that's going through mod 3, there is a Kotoryu Kihon that is not seen a lot within the Bujinkan. Now, I can't speak to what Noguchi Sensei Soke is teaching on a regular basis or whatever, because I've trained Bujinkan, Genbukan, Jininkan, all came from the same basis, right? It's all coming from the same things. But there's a Kihon Gata that looks very hard karate-like, right? And this is what throws people off. But again, I started 1980, so what was being taught was not always the same, right? And one of those things was historical evolution, right? That the Koppo Jutsu evolved into hardstyle karate. Koshi Jutsu evolved into soft style karate, right? Jutai Jutsu, Jujutsu, then can be bastardized into Jujitsu, but you got to be careful, right? Because that U can be it's clipped linguistically. So Jujutsu can sound like Jujitsu because of the way it's linguistically clipped, but the kanji afterwards matters. Okay. So if we choose the wrong kanji, when we don't have path, skills, technique, that kind of thing, what we end up with jitsu is a trick, right? It's a trick, which means he has to fall for the trick for your shit to work. Okay. So again, this stuff can go way deep, but some of the other things that I'm going to be discussing during that program when it comes to Kyusho is the person can experience pain from what you're doing, but like that sergeant in that unit way back, right? He didn't experience the pain until the next day because the nervous system had to reset itself, so he got the neurofeedback, right? But while he was drunk off his ass, couldn't feel anything. So while you could get a pain response that could cause a flinch or him to have diminished capability or capacity or whatever, it could be delayed, right? So I think I have like 7 categories of problematic situations where pain is not it's not a good plan. Okay. I think we hit on 3 major ones, and then I think I hinted at 2 more. Okay. So anyway, quote from Hatsumi Sensei: "It is not that you aim for a Kyusho. It is that you see it when it appears and allow the strike to land naturally." Right. This is actually a quote from his book, Unarmed Fighting Techniques of the Samurai. There's a lot of other things that have to go into this, right? Your taijutsu and your Kyuju Tenkan and things like that, right? But what I really need to reinforce here is that this is not magic, right? It's what I might call map meets moment, right? Right tool, right target, right time, right? Because if I can catch somebody on Kimon or one of these Godin points or whatever. Now, if I'm doing Koshi Jutsu, I want to hit below the floating rib, right? Directly at the wall of the where the diaphragm is, right? If I'm doing Koppo Jutsu, I'm going to punch the floating rib itself or any of these ribs up along, depending on whether I'm doing Tsukagi Yoshin, Shinden Fudo, Gyoko, Koto, whatever, right? But I want to punch the bone so it flexes and causes soft tissue damage or threatens on this side the spleen, on this side the liver, right? Which causes a whole bunch of internal things to be happening that the body's going to do things to protect those life-sustaining organs that, you know, there's discomfort. Anyway, back to that Kotoryu Kihon, where the punch comes in and we do this uke nagash, where we just kind of cover it right into a doko, very, very low. Anybody that's gone through mod 3, you know what I'm talking about, right? And then there's this shot, bow, right into the solar plexus, right into the could be the mastoid process, right? Which of course, if you break that off, you drive it into the heart or the aorta, that kind of thing. But you're punching this thing, right? Where everything kind of locks up, seizes. If you've ever seen like fights where somebody gets punched in the solar plexus and they might take a step or 3, right? And look perfectly fine, like they're trying to shake it off. And then all of a sudden, like everything just collapses, right? Same thing with a shot to the liver, those kind of things. Where they take this shot and they try to recover and then, blah, right? Because the body, right? Whether or not the liver was actually damaged or not, it's the body shutting down because the body is wired to not injure itself. This is an important piece of understanding Kyusho. The body is wired to not hurt itself, okay, to not further damage itself. So if the body gets impaled, it'll freeze, right? To understand this allows us to understand a lot of techniques that look like, well, why did you just fucking, I know you ran him through, but if that were me, I would just cut him. No, you won't, because the shoulders are wired to the torso and anything you do here makes shit move, right? So the reason why that's a one and done kind of thing, even though the guy might not have died right in the moment, is because he can't move his limbs. The body will immobilize everything and anything that is directly or indirectly connected to that if it moves, if that body part or parts move, it'll move the damaged area. The body's wired to shut things like that down. This is important to understand, right? We are learning to be martial scientists long before we are learning to be martial artists. Okay. Artists look like they can break the rules and create ta-da, right? I don't mean the ones that just like fling paint around out of cans, right? But to understand the science behind it, that puts you at least in the top 10%. Okay. So, again, I'm just going to keep rolling with this and then we'll take some questions and whatnot. But if we further extend this, right, holding on to that weakness and Takamatsu Sensei's comment about it's not about pain. It's not about getting compliance or whatever. It's about triggering a collapse, right? So take it beyond the battlefield, the back alley, whatever, right? We see Kyusho as what we might call the buttons of life. Okay. And we talk in our language anyway, in our culture. Can't speak for everybody's, but in our culture, right? We often talk about pushing somebody's buttons. Okay. Let's stop making it a cliche. Let's understand. If somebody has fucking buttons to push, they're easily controlled. Right? James, what's that saying? I used to use it on your woman when she was in class, right? Some people's buttons are so big. I wanted to go out. I wish that they still had those easy buttons, right? From Staples or something, right? Just slap some freaking double-sided tape on them or whatever. I just want to walk up and put them on people, because some people's fucking easy buttons are like ginormous, right? Like you can't not bump into them. Okay. So, but we also have to be careful, right? That we don't have all these buttons that can be pushed. The more buttons you have, the more sensitivities you have, the not only the easier it is to trigger you, the easier it is to control you. Okay. So very quickly, right? A couple of life situations as Kyusho, right? Times when people are most vulnerable. Okay. I'll give you 3 of them. 1, when they're under stress, when they're under pressure. Okay. 2, during transition or change. And 3, when they're emotionally compromised. Okay. So, the 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 way that it's done, right, is going to be different. Again, just like right the type of Kyusho on the body. Do we strike it? Do we press into it? Do we pinch it? Right? There's a whole category of Kyusho, right? That that are virtually invisible to most people, okay? Because they think of pressing on a point, or they think of hitting the point, or whatever, okay? But there's certain places on the body that, like, if you pinch it, it burns like fire. Other ones, you pinch it, and it's like mildly, it could be surprising, but it's not the same. Okay, pinch the outside skin of your forearm or upper arm. Now pinch the inside skin, right? And it's different. And when I say pinch it, if you understand how the skin is attached to the underlying muscle or the underlying fascia, whatever, it's almost like there are like these little dots or little like a little scallop or whatever, right? These tiny little things, right? That just kind of connected to it. Okay. You can see it a lot when you're looking at feet and hands. Okay. Stay in the pool too long, stay in the tub too long, whatever. And you get out and everything's all wrinkled, right? Well, what you're looking at is the stuff that's puffed, right? Is the waterlogged skin, and the part that's creased and wrinkled and depressed, that's where those connectors are. That's cool shit, right? So anyway, what does that mean, Sensei? That means that the bigger the piece that I take, the less effect I have. But if I can catch that top layer of skin, because there's like 7 layers there, right? Okay. If I can catch that top layer, right, and anchor on one side and pull on the other side, I tear the skin, right? The organ itself, I tear those connections. It's kind of like that little connector you had. There's a little piece of skin between your lower gums and your lower lip, right? It's right where the fovea is, right here, that in cup-like impression or indention, right? If I catch the corners of the mouth this way and bring my fingers together, it doesn't just like come together. At a certain point, this goes from being turned in to popping out. When that pops out, it tears that piece of skin on the inside of the lip. See, nobody looks for that shit. Okay. Or taking your fingernails and raking it down the facial nerve. It's the skin, right? Right in front of the ears, just scraping down, that causes, because that triggers the nerves, that something's coming down. It's a near miss trigger, right? It's going right into the Umon, Dragon's Gate, down into the lungs, or threatening the lungs or the heart, right? So this kind of thing happens. You lock up the neck, right? And you've got extra things, right? So all these different classifications of things, but you get a different type of response. Okay. But the biggest things, life, let's get back to life, right? Life. Okay. So my wife, she was confused when we first got together, because we were talking about, well, she was talking about, right, how well things are going and all that wonderful stuff. And I said, I appreciate that, but I'm not making any long-term decisions about me or us until I see you in at least 2 situations. And that is, you are afraid and you are angry. Okay. So one is emotionally compromised, right? I understand afraid is emotionally compromised, but right, they're 2 different stressors. Okay. So she was confused because she was, why would you scare me, or why would you make me angry? I didn't say I was going to do it. what I need to see is those two situations or those two impulses in a situation that involves both of us. Okay. I need to see you afraid and I need to see you angry. She was confused. I said, when we're afraid and we're angry, the facade drops. More of us comes out, but that's not what I need to see. I need to see if under pressure, under extreme pressure, fear and anger, you're a team player, I get thrown under the bus, or you play escape artist and leave me to solve the problem alone. I'm looking for a partner in life. So anybody can say anything. This is why people end up realizing that if I'd have made different decisions later on, because they didn't know how to do choosing. I've gone through several. So, and I, Mikio helped and all this other stuff so that I could make better choices and find somebody that I don't have to change, right? I'm not here to change anybody, right? There needs to be a fit, not like somebody's better than nobody at all, or I love this person because they love me first. Anyway, so again, under stress, during transition or change, people are unseated, which is part of what the Musha Shugyo process is about. Shugyo is listed in the Seishin Teki Kyoyo book. From a deeper perspective, but on one level, a Musha Shugyo, a warrior quest, Shugyo is putting yourself into a condition where you have to let go of all the handholds, all the safety bars and whatnot that we have in our everyday life that we have directly or indirectly, accidentally or intentionally set up so that life is easy. Right. So when you lose them, you have to reorient yourself and reestablish things so that you can navigate, right? So that you regain your equilibrium. And the more often you do that, the more resilient you become, and the more you trust on your ability to adapt and reestablish equilibrium very, very quickly. The less you depend on the familiar, the less you depend on, everybody doing things your way, kind of thing. That's James. Didn't we just do something recently here on endurance and Takuma Sensei's lesson that under pressure, right? You have the amount of time that it takes for a puff of smoke to disappear, to reestablish equilibrium for endurance. We just did that not too long ago, right? Yeah,
Right.
cool stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like last month.
yeah, something like that. Okay, so again, when people are most vulnerable, right? That's when we're going to be strategically using influence, negotiation, de-escalation, those kind of things to kind of control them and bring things back under control. But we can also influence and use, we'll call it antisocial negotiating, and and pressure tactics to get people to escalate. If you want to dive into it deeper, you can take a look at in Hatsumi Sensei's book. Or no, it's not his book. Sorry, it's Stephen Hayes' book, the first one that came out from Tuttle, Ninja and Their Secret Fighting Art. In the back, in the last section on psychological warfare, this comes out of like the Togakure school, probably also Kumogakure and Gyokushin Nijutsu, because Gyokushin and Kumogakure very, very heavy in psychological warfare. So what you had were 5 weaknesses and 5 needs. Okay, so if you look those things up, the whole idea was if you can identify at least one of those on any person, then you can apply certain types of influence. And it could be to trigger it to get a certain response, but it could also be to promise to take those things away, to protect them from that kind of thing, or to provide that which they need, right? If it's a need, those kind of things, right? All those things are Kyusho, right? So the omote lesson is you learn them so that you can apply influence, right? They're weak points on somebody. The ura, the hidden backside lesson, right, is to make sure that they're not Kyusho for you. Okay. Because otherwise, again, the more you have, the more sensitive they are, right? The more they're critical to your life, your operations, your success, and your self identity, right? If any one of those things are affected, there's a total collapse, right? There's a cascading effect, right? Remember, we're supposed to be doing this stuff to other people, not having this shit done to us. Okay. That's part of what Kuden's job here is to make sure that we're training in the Ninja no Kyomon, the eighth gate in the eight gates, right? Which is to learn and study these other areas that uh, Ninja no Kyomon is the counterbalancing antidote to the Ninja no Uge. Uge is deception, manipulation, influence, those kind of things, right? We do that shit to other people. The antidote or the protection, the armor against somebody doing Ninja no Uge stuff to us is Kyomon, knowledge, right? Everything from self-knowledge to knowledge about a broad array of topics and stuff. It keeps people from blowing smoke up your ass. Okay. So just kind of wrapping this up, right? So Kyusho is a lens, right? It teaches us where the openings are in both body, behavior, those kind of things, right? Psychologically, emotionally, right? The big thing that I really want to convey during this one is not to rely on pain tricks, right? Train for structure, strategy, adaptability, those kind of things, right? Think of Kyusho as distractions or structure like disruptors. Okay. So the goal isn't to gain pain compliance. Pain compliance is icing on the cake if you can get it. It's to get a cascading effect where the body or the mind or their identity it collapses, right? If it collapses, they can't function. They can't get at you if they wanted to. They can't think straight. They can't orient themselves, right? The body, the mind, the spirit, whatever. It's right. It doesn't function. It doesn't work right. Okay. And then with Hatsumi Sensei's thing there with like I don't aim for one. I just realize I'm passing it or it's there or things are coming together and then I just let them meet. Right. So every Kyusho becomes more effective when your mind and movement are aligned. Okay. So that's what I have for this one. We'll open it up to questions here in a second, but just remind everybody, right? If join me on Wednesday for Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, because we're going to dive into the anatomy, some angles, some applications of Kyusho in techniques. I'm going to take a look at some of the kata, right, and show how it's just a freaking string of attacks on Kyusho, right? And then again on Friday, depending on how, because I don't have the whole class for Wednesday fleshed out yet. One or more aspects we're going to train in actual techniques to take a look at how, like for Nidans in my curriculum, one of the principles that they have to have, or one of the skill proficiencies is precision in target acquisition. That means if like I want them to hit a certain point, they need to be hitting that point, not somewhere along the arm, a given point, right? Because that requires less effort, less energy, creates a greater effect with less movement, and it stops this bullshit as quickly as possible. Okay. So Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to lay the foundation for things, break things down, take a look at some Kyusho within techniques. Everything's going to be within the form of certain techniques, like certain kata. We'll take a look at some kata. And then Friday, we'll be training in some with the specific aim. The aim is not going to be to learn the technique. I'm going to try to stick to techniques that everybody knows. The goal will be to look at certain models from how like the Kyusho are hidden in there, right? And what those things are designed. It's not just a hit. We're not just like hitting hard to drive the guy into the ground or whatever, right? What does precision do for us, right? And then also, even with some of the jutai, how to integrate Kyusho attacks to make the technique easier to gain compliance. Sometimes with pain, but the focus will be less on pain compliance and more on this cascading effect, to where if I strike a certain spot, his opposite knee will just collapse out from under him, and whether he wants to or not, it's going to fucking crash and burn. Okay, which should lead folks to realize that okay, doesn't matter if I like rolling or not, doesn't matter if I like break falls or not, doesn't matter how good my rolling is, if I can't roll from that collapsing kind of situation, or if I can't ukemi from that, then I really don't understand ukemi. I understand some kind of gymnastics movements. Okay. All right, so let me flip my screen back here. All right, James, what do we have? Let's wrap this up. Questions, comments, complain.
Greg said we've all seen and or have the traditional point charts of where to hit, but I have yet to see and or learn what point gets hit or pushed with what technique and the movements that need to be aligned up.
And the angle of the strike. Right. I was talking about that with the here's a free one for you. Again, for those of you on audio only, I apologize, but you can look it up. I'm pressing into the Nagare point. It's called Nagare in the Kotoryu list. So it's about 2 fingers down from the crook of the elbow on the top of the forearm, right? Most people think of it as the muscle, but here's a really cool trick for you, right? Some people, again, maybe the muscle's not so sensitive. It usually is for beginners and whatnot. And see, my hand is very, very relaxed, so I can press more into this. Okay, find this little hard band that's right here. But if I were to start to tighten up my hand, this gets more painful. So you can play around with that kind of thing, and it radiates up into the shoulder joint, which means that the shoulder's not going to function as well. But if I feel the person relax when I have their arm and they're trying to go with it, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to peel that muscle off to the side. Okay. You can get in there and feel there's 2 muscles that come together right here. Right. I want to see if I can get to an angle here. Right. I want to peel that muscle to the side. Okay. Literally just peel it to the side and then press in. And now I'm on the nerve. Okay. So that's a whole different kind of approach. But the other thing you can play around with this is if we're attacking bone, we normally go at 90 degrees. Now, I'm not saying you can't go 90 degrees into Kyusho. You can, but Kyusho are normally attacked at 30 to 45 degrees. Okay. And the reason for that is because of the effect it does on other things. So if you've learned to press into Nagore at 90 degrees, I highly recommend that you play around with different angles. So if I go in with my thumb this way, straight in, and then I cock it back like I'm cocking the hammer of a pistol, right? It changes the flow toward in this case, toward my wrist. If I were doing it in a different direction, it would be that way, right? If I press it forward like I'm doing a Boshiken, right? It's going to move in a different direction, side, that kind of thing, right? So while that's interesting, and yes, it changes the angle of the pain, I want you to pay attention to, one, on a simplified level, the fact that the body moves 180 degrees away from danger or pain. So what does that mean? That means that the body will move that point away from your fingertip in the direction that you're pressing. But if you want to see something even more interesting, is watch their shoulder joint and watch how it moves to adjust to move the point, right? The arm can't move anything away from anything, right? Even moving the elbow, it's the shoulder joint that, okay, because the elbow does this. It's a hinge joint. Okay. So for the body to move that point away, it's in the shoulder joint. So if I want the person to go down or get locked a certain way, I want the shoulder joint to move a certain way. If I want them to move away from me because I'm setting them up for something else, then I'm going to want them to. So what you find just with this one, right? Not just with this one, but just playing around with this one is how much you can turn a Kyusho and your attacking finger into a joystick. It's cool, right? Add the cool factor back into what used to be boring training. But again, that's for if you're getting pain compliance, because you can do the same thing by pinching and then moving in different directions. You get the same kind of thing because the body's trying to save itself. But there's other things. And that's why I want to do this other training, because if the person can't feel pain, there are certain things you want to, if we take that Kyusho list and we start to subdivide it, pressure, striking, those kind of things. But that list tells you where the strike or the pressure should land or originate. What it doesn't point out, like there's some points back here, the base of the neck, top of the traps, that if I strike them, there's a cascading effect down through the hips that cause the knees to buckle out from under the person and they just drop to the ground. Okay. Really cool shit. Okay. So, well, but I didn't touch the knees. I understand. Okay. And there's other things within the body. So that's what Koshi Jutsu is more about, right? How do I hit certain muscle areas or connector pieces that when I hit them, right, it stalls them, right? I don't care if this person can feel pain or not. It damages them, stretches them, or causes an interaction that they won't move, right? So anything that's connected to them that is dependent upon that critical junction, remember, critical spot, critical point, vital point, right? It won't function well. Okay. So that's cool shit to me, because the older you get, the better you get, right? But if we're all about slam and bang and all that kind of stuff, then, well, then you get to my age and I used to do that. I earned my black belt once. Okay. Cool shit. All right. What do you got, James? Questions, comments, anything else?
No, that's all I see.
All right. Well, either I was extremely informative or I don't know. I put people to sleep, or I don't know what to ask. Covered too much. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, all right. So please don't forget, those of you who've already signed up for it, and we still have some space available. Only got a dozen or so people showing up for spring camp. So spring camp is coming up May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So we start 8 p.m. on Friday, May 2nd, for those who can make it in early. If you can make it in early enough, you can jump into the regular dojo classes on me. Not on me. Don't jump on me. That'll be interesting. But you don't have to pay anything extra. You can just take classes. I've got a session planned for that evening. And then we go full bore starting at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, both days. 2 sessions, a morning session, afternoon session. We have 4 breakout sessions set up, all that kind of stuff. We do have a virtual option for it. You don't have to be able to do both days. If you can't do any of them, if you go to onlineninjaacademy.com/spring-camp, all the options are at the bottom. There's a single day option, there's a weekend option, and you can choose between virtual or live. And then the option is also there to just order the videos. That is there, right, James? I think I also created the camp. I created the camp video standalone page as well. So we'll get that information out to people. Fall camp is in, when the hell is that? October. Yeah. Theme has already been chosen for that. So I just need to finish out the events page. And I just decided on the theme for Daikomyosai in January. I think that's the weekend of the 9th, 10th, and 11th. I think, January 26th. Also, just hit the calendar. I will be in Syracuse, New York, September 20th. It's a Saturday. I'll be doing a single day seminar for my student, Mike Guzik, who's a Jesuit priest. He's a history professor that teaches there at Lemoyne College. And so we'll be in the rec center. So I just need to finish up a couple of strategic things on my end. He actually has their wellness department paying me to run this thing for Lemoyne students, outside folks, to keep everything easy and whatnot. I'm going to set up something so people can just register through me. But if you're in that area or want to be in that area, September 20th of 2025, we are doing Ninpo Taijutsu, we are doing sword, and we are doing mindfulness. Right? So Zanshin kind of things, right? So yeah, it'll be cool. So if you can make it for that, that'd be awesome. If not, I've got other folks that are trying to get things set up in their areas. If you are interested in that, then send an email. How do I host a seminar? Because I have a huge list of people, subscribers and all that from different areas. And if you have a training group, this can also help seed that, because bring in somebody that does things a certain way or whatever. And, I've got people on my list, or there's other people out there that want to do things. It gets more exposure to your group. And if it's done right and we have the minimum number of people showing up and all that, it doesn't cost you anything. I'm really versed at hosting seminars. And the other thing is the seminar host gets lots of extra free training, because you got to take me to meals and you got to take me back and forth to the hotel and the airport and all that. And I'm not a big talker about just random bullshit. So we'll be talking about training. So guess what? And the other cool benefit about hosting a seminar is you get to pick the topics. So nothing like being greedy. All right, that's it. So anything else, James?
No,
Thanks
sir.
for the stories. We definitely have to start doing something where we're bringing those things up and then doing like a critique from, if people would be interested in that kind of thing, breaking them down and taking a look at, where things have gone amiss, or sometimes you got to take the shot and, right, the reality of things is there's a small percentage of people within any of these organizations, Budokan, whatever, that have actually been in bad situations like that. And this is the caveat, that have actually used this stuff that we're teaching in those bad situations. Okay. So we should probably maximize or leverage that a little bit more. All right. So if there is nothing else, then I think that'll be it for this one. So again, thank you to everybody who is regular. Thanks to everybody who jumped on this one because they saw Kyusho. Ooh, I want to. Right. And hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday for Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. And if not, or that and the Friday Masterclass, that'd be cool. And if not, something else coming up. Or just next week's Kuden.
Get more of Kuden Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online